sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, on a Tuesday. We got lots to talk about: MLB action, NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs. There's so much going on. And not to mention draft night, closest to the end of the year, month. It's going to be a lot of fun here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. We got a stacked lineup here for you. Raul Gonzalez, former MLB outfielder. Chris Joseph, former NHL defenseman. And also Kameron Arnold, current NFL linebacker for the Commanders and Chiefs, is going to be joining us. We got a lot to discuss. But I figured we'd go right up and ahead and introduce our guest with Raul Gonzalez, since a lot of things are really like they're changing up for Major League Baseball as we await our guest here in just a moment. But, so the playoffs, of course, are going to be starting up here in about a couple of days. We got the play-in tournament tonight and tomorrow. But I'm going to be completely blunt and honest with you. When it comes to playoff time, and I used to feel like this when I was a kid, where I felt like, to me, the NBA playoffs was so much fun. And at the same time, I knew what I was getting as far as top-notch teams. But I just, for whatever reason, I don't feel as connected as I once did with the NBA playoffs than what I do with the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I'll have more to discuss up and on that. But joining us, as of course, with the changes in Major League Baseball thus far, and it's been really exciting, and getting his thoughts, former MLB outfielder Raul Gonzalez joins the show. Major League Baseball, I mean, to me, there's nothing like America's pastime, only continuously evolving and getting better as we go through with the game. This ABS system, Raul, is really a game changer. Because number one is it's now evening the playing field for the pitcher and for the hitter. Because if a pitch is outside, the hitters can now make that decision, and they'll go back and they can say, okay, it really is not within the batter's box itself. And then for pitchers, if it just kind of hits a little of that line, they can go back, look at it. So how have you felt about this evolution now with Major League Baseball's ABS system? Because I think it's doing a few things. It's not picking on umpires. I think it's holding them accountable for a lot of these strike calls, because especially when you look at guys like CB Buckner and them, it's just helping them to really find clarity with a lot of these pitches that we've been going back and forth with. Is it in the zone, out the zone? What are your thoughts?
Thank you for having me, Jake. I like it. It's just take the doubt out of the at-bat. You don't have to go back and say, oh, that was a bad pitch, that was a bad call. If you're sure it's a bad call, you tip your hat, and get the result from the computer. At first I believe it was not going to be framing and all that because of the computer thing, but the framing is still there, and you have to really select the right time to challenge. And sometimes the pitches look really bad and they kind of snip the corner and you're out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, and it's becoming a game changer for some, because those strike calls that you don't think can hit the zone, and then all of a sudden they do, can help with getting your offense back out onto the plate and try to at least get the crucial runs. If you're down 2-3 runs or such, you can get the meat of the order back up and into it with just one call. And then the same thing with the offense. If you got a flowing offense right now that you don't want to end up taking out of the batter's box, that's an opportunity for them to really take advantage of that.
It is, man. I mean, a lot of times we're not very comfortable when they're making the new changes in the game, but I like that one. I think it's something like, the pitcher can call it, the catcher and the hitter, and you all have a saying this time. And you don't have a lot of opportunities, but you have to make sure, and you have to really sure depend on the situation of the game to get that call.
Yeah, it does. And it really can change a trajectory of a game. That's why I'm waiting until we get into postseason, because I want to see how much of an impact can really, determine the way in which a postseason can be ran by for that. So kind of getting your thoughts about this, because we had the World Baseball Classic not too long ago. To me, I thought it's fantastic. I love it. I think 2026 sports is fantastic for a few reasons. We had the Olympics that I thought were fantastic. United States comes up second in medal count. And then we had the World Baseball Classic where Venezuela it was really, like, I thought it was fantastic for them. And you could see how much of the energy and the vibe when you are playing and representing for your respective country and what it means to them. Because you got to think the international pool is only going to continue to to get bigger and better from here. So, I thought it was great. What were your thoughts on this? Because I think there still are some adjustments that need to happen. But as far as the timing in which that this tournament starts, like where do you kind of stand on that?
I don't know. It's very difficult to pick a time to play it. I think this is the right time because the players going through the off season, they pretty much know if they're gonna be on the team or not. They can prepare a little bit earlier and take advantage of it. If you do it at the end, a lot of guys just don't. They're tired after the season, and I think before spring training, maybe a long spring training a little bit more and start the season a little bit later. Give them some more time with their own team before they go on the tournament. But this tournament this year was one of the best one I have seen. The vibe, the energy, everything was really good. Good surprises. There always a surprising thing on the tournament. Everybody look at the big things, and there's always someone sneaking. So there's no scripture in baseball, so that's why it's so interesting because you never know what can happen and you never know what can win. You can have the best team, but not necessarily you're gonna win.
Yeah. No, and that's also too where you got to have like your best lineups. You also got to have your best pitching staff. And I felt like Venezuela, much like Italy, they were really scrappy, and it was going to come down to the wire of who was the best to come out of it and play in the championship. So I thought it was fantastic overall. But as far as for like the seasons, for example, for the Mets right now, because right now we know with Pete Alonso's departure, you bring in Marcus Semien, you bring in Bo Bichette. Right now, these guys are not quite as clicking as we hope, but we know New York sports. You played in this organization. You know exactly how the environment is. It is you want instant. You want an instant change to where this team is going to be winning and where this team is competitive. Because you got the Phillies, you got the Marlins, who are having the best start in 17 years. And so when you think about that, like what has to happen? Because now there's talks about what could happen in Carlos Mendoza's job. And then if somebody like Carlos Beltran is right as a fit for managing this clubhouse.
Well, he was online before, but it's hard. It's hard to blame a manager on this situation, especially with the Mets when they kind of broke the team down. They let a lot of people go, and they only let left one player that was part of the other regiment, the other team, which is Lindor, and right now he's not playing at his best. And there's many elements of it. First, they changed the team, they switched the whole staff. They kept the manager, but they switched a whole new staff. All these players, they're not, it's uncomfortable. They let a lot of people go. Some financial teams, some let go. They brought new guys, and I don't know how baseball is now. This experience of the new people in the highest level are are different. A lot of them have not been there personally, so I just don't understand how they can transmit that energy to a major leaguer when you were not in that position, or at least being professional. So professional baseball player. So they change the staff and the change of the team. This is like it's honestly it's like a whole rebuilding without but trying to win at the moment. So it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough.
Yeah, and you figure you got rid of one outfielder with Brandon Nimmo going to Texas, and you're just trying to put all the pieces together as much as you can, because we know Steve Cohen is not afraid to spend the money, but we know that you want to spend it right and have the right chemistry guys that understand the task, and then at the same time building for the right future for the next few years ahead to be competitive in the National League. So I think and I think it was interesting. So, um, I think personally, when I look at a lot of these teams, because we all know, like with the Dodgers spending up all the money that they are. But you know what, though? A lot of these teams that don't have the Dodger payroll, they're coming out and they're being competitive. I know it's early in the season, but when you think about that, because you even played into an era where, you had the hot stove, where the Yankees were spending money, the Red Sox were spending money. So when you look at this, I think it's quite possible that teams that don't have that high of a payroll. I was surprised of St. Louis to start the way that they did. Now you got Jordan Walker, who's got now 8 home runs to start the year. To me, is it quite possible for a small market that we've seen a couple times where they've come competitive? They kind of come out pretty fierce, because when you go into the postseason, they're a team that they're taking out the background noise and they want to strictly play. So I think it's quite possible, because most people here in Denver are not even talking to the fact that the Rockies sold 40% of their stake to the Penner and the Walton family, which will give them more money to now go and spend and be competitive. So I'd say it's quite possible for a team that can really match with a team like the Dodgers, regardless of the spend, because it ultimately has to come to the magical moment of October that gives you the momentum and gives you the strength to play competitively.
Definitely, yeah. The Dodgers right now, they're the number one team. They're out of the gate playing good, and there's some other surprises, like the Pirates are playing good, the Marlins. So, but it's early. It's like some teams that are winning, they probably not playing the elite teams right now. So this is a long season. This is a long marathon. I rather start good, because if I get cold, I can get a chance to get hot again. But and when you start slow, is in the big league, it's hard. It's really hard to climb back up. So you at least if you're playing 500 now, you can be okay. But you have to pick it up, because as soon as uh, the good teams get hot, they're really gonna get hot, and they're gonna start. They do what they do. They have more veteran players. They know when they have a low start how to get back on it. They trust themselves. A lot of the younger players or younger teams, if they don't have a good start, or personally they don't start good, it's really hard to clean back up, because they don't have a lot of experience. And like in the big league, if they find a hole, they're gonna keep pounding you in that area until you make the adjustment.
Love it. This is why like postseason baseball is always my favorite come October, because the stakes are high. And at the same time, it's also better for viewership because we know what to get. But you add in the new system, you add in a lot of these new additives, and I think it's going to be continuously competitive. But I do believe that it helps those quote unquote little guys to show up bigger in these bigger spots. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be exciting all the way through and through. But Raul, appreciate you for coming on by. Listen, prayers go out to your family during the time and hope for a best recovery as well, man. Take care of yourself, and we'll see what happens throughout the entirety of the Major League season.
All right, Jay. Thank you for having me, and talk soon.
Absolutely, man.
All
right. Transitioning up and over, and he knows a thing or two when it comes to being into the spotlights, and especially with a team, with Edmonton, with all of the talent, and seeing what the Stanley Cup playoffs is really going to be all about. Joining us as a former NHL defenseman, Chris Joseph joins us on the phone. Chris, nothing like Stanley.
I lost you. I got no audio.
Uh-oh. All right, we're getting some audio difficulties up here real quick. But oh, I can't hear you up and on that side now. Uh-oh. Let's see. Probably have to do an audio adjustment. Yeah, because I can't hear on your side up from there. Or we'll bring him down real quick, make sure everything looks good. Yeah, I truthfully think that now with the new ABS system, I think it's exciting. And it's not there to pick on manager or umpires or such and try to feel like, everything's got to be perfect all in this space. I think it ultimately has to come down to you're trying to get clarity, you're trying to get accuracy, and most importantly, like it's trying to control the trajectory of where the game is going. So that's initially with where it comes down to up from here. We'll check up with Chris here, making sure that the audio is good. Oh, not quite yet. Got a little bit of time. Yeah, I just truthfully think that Major League Baseball's postseasons, I think, are going to be much more exciting. I can't wait to see what the end results will be for the viewerships and such. So, all right, we'll bring them right up. All right, how about now?
I got nothing.
All right, I can hear you on my end.
No.
But apparently
I'm reading your lips.
All right, let's see. Uh-oh. All right, let me actually invite you back up. I'll send you another invite.
Sorry, Jake, I can't hear you for whatever reason. My apologies.
Yeah, no worries. Let me actually go ahead and send another invite up and into there. See what. Yeah, you gotta love the technical difficulty sometimes. But yeah, I think. Oh, all right, let's try it now.
Okay.
All right, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Beautiful. There we go.
I don't know what happened there. You were chatting with Raul, and as soon as you got off with him, I lost you.
Yeah, technical difficulties at its best. So, all right, here we go. We're right around the corner for NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, I think it's interesting because to me, and even with your experience going into the playoffs and being in the Stanley Cup, we know it's a grit and it's a grind for a lot of teams. And I was about to start the show with this, I feel a disconnect with the NBA playoffs because years ago, I didn't feel that because there were a lot of star players and I felt like the nostalgia of it because we know it's a stylistic sport, and there's a mix between individual and then also team sport chemistry. But I feel the opposite with the NHL. I feel more connected with the Stanley Cup playoffs because you got star power. You've got, a great team chemistry all around. And these games are exciting, even if it gets longer to the overtime. So from your experience, what exactly do we expect when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs? Because many people that are new to hockey have no idea what they're missing out on in this.
Well, I think number one, the game's in as good a shape as it's ever been. There's so much young star power in the NHL right now. on so many different teams. And obviously we're in Canada here, so we live and breathe it. But I think for a lot of American viewers, you'll see that the game's getting fast, it's getting exciting, and the league's getting a lot of parity where a lot of teams are close. And even though you've got, Colorado Avalanche are strong, Minnesota Wild are strong, but honestly, from 1 to 16, anybody can beat anybody really on any given night. So it's not really about who had the better regular season. It's sort of about which team's gelling at this time and playing their best hockey.
It's kind of interesting because the storylines that we have this year, Buffalo, first time in 15 years they're in the playoffs, and everybody's got to be loving it because outside of the Bills always being in the playoffs for the NFL, now you've got hockey going into the playoffs now, and a first timer with the Utah Mammoth, who originally was a team you played for with the Coyotes, and so I feel bad for Arizona fans because the fact of the way it went down, but you got to be amped up and excited when you get playoffs in Utah. That just means now you're officially on the map. So lots of storylines, but I feel like it could be anybody's game up from here because the Avalanche may look strong, but do they really look stronger as we get further and further in the playoffs? It's honestly a hard guess from here the closer we get to the Stanley Cup final.
It is, and it's so exciting to have teams like Buffalo. Like Buffalo nobody ever thought they'd ever make the playoffs, and they fired a general manager early in the season, and they have just been on a tear. Utah was a up and coming team in Arizona, but they were just young, and they're maturing, and obviously their fan base is ecstatic. And I'm sure they're driving the team too. They're feeding off that energy, so. It is exciting to have the new teams, and then you got the same old teams. Colorado's always been strong. Dallas has always been strong. Vegas, Edmonton, Carolina, lots of teams there. But I mean, it's really anybody's game. I think at this point, Pittsburgh, I think overshot a lot of expectations this year. Ottawa squeaked in. Even the teams that were, 10, 15 points ahead of the bottom teams, you can't write out, the bottom 8, on each conference. It's going to be interesting for sure.
It's interesting too because the fact of Anze Kopitar spending as many years as he has with the Kings, he ain't quite done yet with the Kings sneaking into the playoffs, But there's one person in particular that I think he had a hell of a 2025, 26 year, and that's Alex Ovechkin. I don't know, to me, it all started when, Russia being banned for this year's Olympic competitive tournament. And I even said to everybody, if Russia was in this thing, Russia, United States, Canada, and I would make the argument Finland would have been the top 4 teams in the Olympics that would be competing for a gold medal. And because that didn't happen, it kind of left Alex Ovechkin in a pickle of, I'm close to the end of my career. I would have loved to have had a cherry on top type of deal to be playing for my country one last time in this and then ride off into the sunset. And then all of a sudden, you had the last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins against your rival, Sidney Crosby, and you don't shake hands, and then all of a sudden you come up to the news, Washington lost it to the playoff contention. So it's like, what really runs through your mind? If you're in the mind of Alex Ovechkin, what really has to run through your mind?
Well, it's an interesting question. First of all, hockey-wise, I mean, I don't want to get into geopolitics, but hockey-wise, Russia should always be in these events. I mean,
absolutely,
they're one of the greatest hockey countries in the world, and I know Canada and Russia have always had an amazing rivalry. Hell, I got into a brawl with the Russians in the World Juniors in 1987. So we've always had a good rivalry, and it's fun. I think that rested maybe some of the guys. Panarin and Ovechkin rested them this year. But I gotta say too, like Alex Ovechkin at 41 years old, scoring 30 goals, it's incredible. Like the guy, he doesn't move like he used to move, but he's still got the most elite shot. And if he packs it in, which it appears as though he's going to, It's sad, because I think there was people out there, myself included, that would love to have seen him get 1,000 NHL goals, which is incredible. But still, the most elite goal scorer of all time, and the game will be a little bit less without him. But he sure provided years and years of entertainment with his shot and his scoring ability.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have had a ride into the sunset moment with Alex Ovechkin of everything he's accomplished, finally getting the Stanley Cup in 2018. Like, it would have been just the perfect form for him, breaking Wayne's record on that, and then just, being able to play and represent for your country one last time in this setting. Which leads me to this, because looking at the Edmonton Oilers right now, and seeing the state in which Connor McDavid finds himself. You've been a part of a fantastic group in Edmonton that went through a lot of adversity. I mean, I think of it this way. I compare the situation that Wayne Gretzky and many of you have went through to the Jordan Bulls years, because Jordan, youngster, great scorer, and was just so iconic that he lived and breathed Chicago basketball, but had a roadblock because he's dealing with Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Bad Boys of the Pistons. Whereas for Edmonton, you had to deal with the 4 straight years of New York, the Islanders being as tough as they are, and to where Gretzky and Messier and many of them are like, look, we got to continue to build this group because we will get there. It's initially where everything has to click, and then by the time they get back in and they have the momentum driving their way to winning and hoisting the Stanley Cup, it becomes the best breath of fresh air for everybody. So when I look at Connor McDavid with this, because he's the best hockey player right now in the nation and amongst the league, and with everything that had gone through where they were in the Stanley Cup twice against Florida and could not pan out through them, I mean, there's got to be some sort of timetable ticking here, Chris, because the Edmonton can't stand for another one of these years to where they kept trying, but yet it still doesn't seem to pan out. Like, something has to give at the end of the day.
Well, for sure. And you said it, like the Bulls had the Pistons. Even when the Oilers were winning cups back in the day, the Calgary Flames gave them a run every year. And, like the most recent version of the Edmonton Oilers ran up against, the Florida Panthers, which were built for the playoffs. And, they look like they obviously got tired. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row. It's not an easy chore. But I think what you got to look at is you got to just get to the dance. That's a big thing. Like, you got to get to the top 16. After that, in the hockey world anyways, you don't necessarily have to, the regular season really is meaningless. All you got to be is you got to be playing your best hockey at the right time. Are the Edmonton Oilers playing the best hockey right now? I don't know. They've definitely cleaned up their defensive woes, but there's still a goaltender question mark. There's still a defense question mark, and they're up against a bunch of giants. So nobody really knows, but I'm telling you, like, just get to the dance. I also think too that, Connor McDavid, he's going to get it at some point. But the clock is definitely ticking. I don't see Connor McDavid finishing his career without a Stanley Cup. For myself, I sure hope it's here in Edmonton. But the great players, that's all he really wants. He took a big pay cut again this year to leave money on the table so the team could sign other players. And, did they improve? Debatable. Are they there and they got a chance at it? Yeah, as good as anybody else at this point.
Do you recall a memory of yours when you won the Stanley Cup, like what that moment felt like for you, and any kind of fun moment? Because listen, I lived in Vegas my entire life, all 29 years. And when I tell you, when the Vegas Golden Knights planted, like I wasn't sure what to expect. I would have expected them not to be as good because it was a start. But then when they had the most memorable first-year start to get into the Stanley Cup final, and then getting a chance to meet Stanley in person. I didn't touch him. I made sure that I was like, we're going to have a great conversation here because I need to know your history. And then find when the time they would hoist the cup. And then the minute that I got my hometown finally hoisting a cup for the first time, it was just first time ever watching my favorite team and being my hometown team meant a lot to me because it was just the energy, the vibe, and yet the grind and the hard work finally paying off. Was there a moment for you when you finally won that Stanley Cup, a great memory that always stayed with you for so long?
Well, Jake, I got to correct you first. I was with the team for 2 cups in 88 and 90, but I was one of the Black Aces. I was practicing every day. I was there. I wasn't on the active roster, so I was one of those young kids that was cutting my teeth. And honestly, our team won the Stanley Cup when I was 18 years old. And I was at that time going, okay, I'll get my time. And, 15 years later when I'm retiring, I'm like, damn it, I didn't get there, but so close, and as there's other times too, I got to game 7 of the conference finals. And, unfortunately for myself, the one thing you do remember is the pain of defeat. Very few get to feel the glory of the victory. But so I was with, Gretzky and company and Messier and those guys for the 88 Cup, the 90 Cup. Gretzky was gone, but Messier was still back. So I was skating with the guys every day, and I was practicing, waiting for an injury. Didn't get in, but I tell you, the sacrifice that they all made, it's incredible. And there's times when the guys that have won the Stanley Cup, you think they're just going to be celebrating like crazy, and they're literally just licking wounds and trying to recover. And they get the energy back at 24 hours later, and they're ready to party. But they are beat up at the end of this thing. And at the end of the day, I think every player would tell you it's worth it 100%.
Absolutely, especially when you're a star goaltender and you're taking pucks to the face left and right, and then your whole body's just bruised up, and then your body's under so much duress because of not even prepared for checks or any of that up and on the boards. And so it's like you're constantly fighting through all of that. And then it's just a lot sweeter when you drink out the cup. And so, to see that, and even for a lot of the guys that have been waiting for this moment for so long, that that's worth the wait. And that's worth having the opportunity. I mean, we watched Ray Bourque finally end up winning the Stanley Cup, and how memorable it was for him. Lanny McDonald with Calgary. So anything could really happen at this point. But if it's so memorable to someone who's been around in the league for so long, that's just a 1 in a million type of feeling for them. So
I know players would sell their soul to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, that's how we are in Canada anyways. We grow up dreaming of it. And, when you get to that point, you make it to the NHL. That's all you really want. And I truly believe that's what all the players want. They'll put money aside, they'll put everything aside, and all they really want is their name on the Stanley Cup, to feel like a true champion. And a lot of these players have won at different levels. They've won in the American Hockey League, they've won in junior, won Memorial Cup. But at the end of the day, the one that everybody's most proud of, obviously, is a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the feeling worthwhile at the end of the day. Well, Chris, appreciate you for joining us here up and onto the program. Let's see, because there's lots of surprises, lots of shockers, but there's also so much fun action that comes through with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's see what we have in store for the Edmonton Oilers and see where we stand at the end of the day and who is worthy to hoist Sir Stanley at the end of the tournament.
It's going to be a fun ride. We had the Oilers and the Avalanche last night. It was a 2-1 shootout victory for the Avs. So I don't think it's going to be any difference if these teams meet in the conference finals, and that's pretty much going to go for every other team in the playoffs.
There you go, man. Well, appreciate you for coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of it, and we'll see what we got up here and in the playoffs in the next couple of days.
Thanks, Jake.
Absolutely. All right, moving forward, as of course, the draft is right up around the corner with us. So many different surprising story headlines and lots to talk about currently into the NFL. And we'll see. We'll see what a lot of these teams address. But NFL linebacker Kameron Arnold joining us here on the program. We actually had just had the feed. It just dropped. Whoops. We'll get him back here in just a moment. I think the NFL draft, like I kept talking about in the last couple of days, is there's going to be so many headliners out there, and there's a lot of shockers. So I think it's going to be a great night at the end of the day. And how a lot of teams, a lot of general managers are going to go about it, coaches as well. There's just lots to really think about, lots to kind of keep in mind. So, all right, Kameron Arnold joining us here up and on the program. All right. Well, you went up with the Washington Commanders, but looking at this particular draft, it is defensive centric, and I think there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that can really help with a team. And when you looked at, being in Washington, because to me, I feel like they could be in a market with getting an edge rusher, and maybe more in particular, a guy like Ruben Bain. So I think there's going to be a lot of shockers in this draft. How do you kind of see this as far as draft night goes? Because it's a party, is a lot of different shockers, but even for upgrades for teams that they know they really need it.
I would say, the draft is, a really exciting time for, these young guys and these up and coming, draft picks. But yeah, I mean, for me, I can't say too much. I'm a young guy myself, it's still getting my feet wet. So, you know, um, I would just say, it's a lot of exciting young prospects going through this draft, just like there is every year. And, that it's an exciting time for these guys. And, they should, just enjoy the process and enjoy the moment. And yeah, there's a lot of, great, talented guys in this draft. And yeah.
When I look at the NFL and a lot of teams that, we thought would have been playoff teams, but then just fell short. So we know that there's going to be some much needed pieces, much needed positions that need to be filled. Right now with the Kansas City Chiefs, we know that I kind of felt like they took a year off in this per se because Patrick Mahomes recovering from an injury. There wasn't a whole lot of production as far as getting them back in because the division's tougher. Like now you got the Chargers playing as good as they are, the Broncos winning the division for the first time in 2015, and the Raiders ended up addressing a lot of pieces. So when you kind of look into the vibe in the organization right now, because lots of teams, when this happens, will go one of two avenues. It's one, we're rebuilding, we need to get a lot more pieces, or two, we're in a reboot mode because last year didn't end up the way we did, but we're only going to take 1 year off and resurge ourselves because these guys are ready to play and they're ready to get themselves back into contention. Like, what's the vibe got to be like for Kansas City? Because they are hungry. They want to address this thing as best as possible to get them back into that competition that they were unlucky with last year.
Yeah, with Kansas City, the standard's been set. That they have a reputation of just always being that team that is around in January and February, and I think that this time is just like you said, just to rebuild and really just reestablish the culture of winning and getting back to what Kansas City does best, and that's being in the playoffs and competing for a Super Bowl. So Kansas City, they're taking one step at a time in this process. And we're just building right now and just taking it day by day, and just getting back to the standard and the culture of Kansas City Chiefs.
So being in Washington, you got a chance to see Jaden Daniels up front in person, and I think he's a very talented quarterback. I really do believe the future is bright, but I will say, though, Cam, there was a point where I watched Jaden Daniels, and I know he is like his body build kind of, a little bit more like, put it to you this way. I'd say just adding a few like pounds to just bulk up a bit because you're withstanding hits. You're taking hits from all these guys left and right. And I do think that if he matches up to the physicality that we've been seeing for the last 2 seasons now, where defenses are getting ferocious, it's more trench warfare and ground game than we've ever seen it before. So when you look at Jaden Daniels, I think this is an opportunity for a bounce back year after injuries and fighting the inconsistencies in some areas. Because to me, I think there's a bright future here in Washington. They went through so much of a culture change from previous ownership to having this, and to where now Dan Quinn, he's a guy that, listen, you put your nose down and you get physical and you win those trench warfare battles. That's where you're really going to be a competitive team at the end of the day. Because the NFC East, we'll see what happens by draft night, but I do feel like there is room for improvement and room to really kind of take away by storm game after game in a 17-week season.
Yeah, I think last year, Jaden just, had an unfortunate uh dealing of, injuries, but I definitely think, he'll bounce back, and he'll show everybody that he's the same guy that he was when he first came into the league. So I think he'll be, great this season, and he'll bounce back. And I think Washington, they're hungry to get back to where they were the previous year as well as a whole. So I think that they're just gonna take advantage of the draft, and I think they've taken advantage of free agency, and they're just getting back to what what they established that year one with that coaching staff. So yeah.
Final question here for you as I look at the draft. I am looking at one position in particular, and a position that you play in linebacker. I'm noticing a really good trend as an upward value of how important it is to have a great linebacking core whenever you got one who's predicated to being a tackler and another one who is that voice to setting up the front seven. I talked with a lot of people on the defensive side of the ball, especially safeties, because they voice out up and onto the secondaries and then voice it back to their middle linebacker to say, hey, this is the setup formation. This is what the quarterback's trying to do, and kind of relay that. So when you look at these linebackers, because I'm looking at Sonny Styles, I'm looking at a Arvell Reese, a couple of these linebackers coming in, and it's going to work one of two ways. There'll be ferocious tacklers to stop the run or add pressure up and into the quarterback, and some that are vocalizing with the front seven of setting up the scheme plan to not only just acquire pressure, but also be aware of the scheme set offensively of what they're trying to build around, especially tight end positions. Because once the middle of the field's open, that's dicey. And so when you look at that, like what in your stature, when you look at a linebacker of his responsibilities, what is something to expect of this? Because I'm excited for this position in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, the linebacker position is extremely important to the defense. Linebackers are the quarterbacks of the defense, and a great linebacker is always evaluated by how violent he plays and how well he communicates. And I think that those are two attributes that everyone is looking for in terms of finding a linebacker. And as well as just being a great tackler sideline to sideline, and also being involved in the pass game as well, just because the NFL game is primarily a passing league. And linebackers is just it's a really important position. I think that there's a lot of great guys in this draft coming out that will look to make an immediate impact with a lot of teams in the league. So yeah, it should be exciting to see. But yeah, linebacker is extremely valuable and extremely important to defenses, and every team is trying to make sure that they have the right one, because they know how valuable it is to have a great linebacker.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, Cam, appreciate you for coming on to the program here. Best of luck to you in the next season, because I know we're looking at what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be trying to do. I mean, there's a lot to think about with the GM, the coach, and such. So it's going to be pretty busy. but at least you're getting a chance to enjoy the next couple of months, and then reporting back up to work and getting up and into camps, man, is going to be exciting. So best of luck to you and to the team, and we'll see what happens up and on draft night and where the Kansas City Chiefs, what we should expect for the next up and coming season. Take care of yourself, my friend.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, we got through a lot of the interviews at the best time that we did. And it's just exciting. And I think that there are going to be a lot of changes up into it. I didn't get a chance to, but I will post up mock draft number 2 on all my social medias. Because, again, we did ours last week, and there was a lot of different surprises. There was a lot of different changes. But I'll definitely start up with this. So going back to what we were going to initially start at the show is the NBA play-in tournament and the playoffs themselves. Listen, I'm not knocking anything. I'm not throwing any shade either. But the NBA playoffs, I don't know what it is for me, because I used to be pretty connected with the NBA playoffs. I really was. Like the late Kobe Bryant and Shaq show for the Lakers, LeBron James leading the Cavs to a finals appearance, and then the Miami Heat with adding LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, and then the Golden State dynasty. And maybe more in particular, because we know dynasties are going to be really hard to come by, especially with the way in which that Adam Silver, and in today's NBA, it's set. But I will say this. I do think it's going to be competitive. I have no doubt of that whatsoever. But I just don't feel a connectivity as I would do with the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think maybe because when I watch this and I see the teams represented, there are 3 teams in particular, and there may be 4, that I feel have an opportunity to appear in the final or win the NBA Finals. Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and with Jaylen Brown. You know very well that this team is competitive. They're ferocious defensively, and they know how to take smart shots. And I think Boston, they're the team that's red hot, and I feel like they're going to be the ones really running through in the East. The Denver Nuggets. I mean, Nikola Jokic, but the problem is they've been dealing with injury issues. I would also say maybe San Antonio, but we know this team's young. And Victor Wembanyama going into the playoffs, I mean, it's going to be a different beast out there. And, you know, the Lakers without Austin Reeves and expecting for Luka to be back, but who knows what the Lakers will be post the injury. So then you have Oklahoma City with SGA, and I like the team. And this is defending champs, but the Western Conference we know has a lot of different storylines. But I just don't feel as so much of the connectivity, and maybe it's because with the way in which the NBA is shifting, and not to mention with LeBron James, you know, how long that he has playing into this league. This is why that I kept saying that when it comes to the relationship between them and college basketball, something's got to give. I mean, these are great athletes. These are players at the end of the day. And to kind of see this for what it is, I just don't know how you could honestly see this. Maybe I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I don't know. But there's so many different parts in this that I wish could be different. Because to me, I'm looking at the NHL playoffs, and I got Buffalo in the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. I have Philadelphia, Pittsburgh back in it. And then I've got the Kings with Anji Kopitar. The Vegas Golden Knights changed their head coach to really push the roster. So, and then I got a first-timer in the Utah Mammoth, which I feel bad for Arizona fans, but with Utah, they're now officially up and on the map. So everything explained about this, I think the Stanley Cup playoffs, in my opinion, and anybody can take it the way that they want to, but I feel like I get more enjoyable excitement in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs than I do of the NBA. And it's no shade being thrown at the NBA because you're still going to have hardcore hoopers out there. But to me, it's just I don't feel quite a connectivity. I'm sorry. I don't know what it's got to take for me to feel that way. But I think at the end of it, it's going to be a fun playoff. I think there's lots of different storylines with as far as teams to go, but it's like it's 3 or 4 teams, and that's really all that I trust. Whereas for the Stanley Cup, I may have more. So I don't know what it has to be. I think a lot of this is it's just the relationship with college hoops and the NIL, and maybe that this is just the change and the trend that it's going towards, and it's only going to take a little bit. But we do have competitive teams. We do have competitive players. But again, people might see it a little differently than me. I think with the NBA playoffs, we should see a lot of excitement. We should see a lot of different storylines. But at the end of it, if you've got the 3, 4 best teams, then whom else are you going to trust with this? So I think to me with the Stanley Cup playoff, because I was also saying this, there's lots of different breakdowns in this. We know that the Islanders getting Pete DeBoer after cutting Patrick Waugh, my big thing is they're trying to invest up and into the future. And Pete DeBoer, he's a defensive-minded guy. Matthew Schaefer, who I think is definitely running with the Calder, because to me, he's an outstanding rookie. The fact that he's breaking this many records, and I mean, this is the hottest start I've ever seen to a rookie in years. And the other thing is coaching changes, teams' momentums and star power, and health on the roster is what really affects teams. But I'll definitely break it down as we get closer. I'll have my predictions all on social media of teams that I do feel might make it through and be able to win the NBA Finals, be able to win the Stanley Cup playoffs. But, you know, to me, I just find more enjoyment. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback and going, well, you don't know basketball. I'm like, well, I do. But right now, I just don't feel as much of a connectivity. And maybe I just got to be patient. I don't know about you. But I'll put a poll up at some point how you feel about the playoffs, because that's just one of the things I just get concerned about. But again, it should be a very good playoff, not disregarding it at all. So, yeah. NHL or NBA playoff? Mostly. Appreciate everybody for being here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you on the next episode here up and onto the show. Have a great night. We'll see you guys soon.